So this next row is pawpaw. Now this is a tree I've tried before. As you can see, I'm seeing some losses, and they're not necessarily losses, because if you look here, this looks completely dead, right? And one way you can tell if a tree is dead is checking flexibility. So the top of this tree definitely feels pretty brittle, but as we get lower, there's still some flexibility there. And like if you look really low, this tree is not dead, okay? It has pumped its energy back into its root system due to pressure, and it's trying to stay alive. Now, the thing about pawpaws, and that I'm aware of, and that I went ahead and planted them in this situation anyway, is that they really like to develop under the shade of other trees. I'm in pretty direct sunlight area right now. There's very little protection for these trees, and so as you can see, I've lost a really good number of them, but not all. And the ones that I have kept, see, this guy is actually putting on new leaves. He'd lost his leaves before, and now he's putting on new growth. So I haven't lost all my trees, and with this drought and this heat, it's surprising that I haven't lost all these pawpaws. When I tried to plant them here previously, I did lose all of them, and that was partially due to rabbit pressure, as I stated before, and partially due to heat and lack of shade. But see, this one is looking pretty good. You can see if I didn't have pretty thick mulch in place, these grasses would really choke these trees out. So it's absolutely necessary in these prairie ecosystems to start to shift that dominance back to a fungal dominance from a bacterial dominance, and to really suppress these grasses. These grasses are extremely tough, and the fibrous roots are what make them so tough. They really rob moisture from other plants, and they will suffocate other plants, just choke them out. Look, I mean, you can see some of these pawpaws are actually doing pretty well. It's interesting how some have pretty much given up and others are doing pretty well. Now this, I'm interested in seeing here. This is a red bud that's really close to this pawpaw. Now this pawpaw has what appears to be possibly a fungal problem or possibly bacterial wilt on the leaves. And I think it's probably being hosted by this red bud. As you can see, it's got something similar going on here. But I want to see we're looking west right now, and so this red bud tree is pretty big. It's on the west side of this pawpaw, so it's giving it some afternoon shade, which should actually help the pawpaw out. So I'm interested in seeing how well this one does in comparison to the others, and that's, you know, if we can push through this whole wilt phase. All right, moving on. What we're looking at here is serviceberry. I am seeing pretty decent survival rate on these trees. We'll see how they do in the long run. I'm concerned about cedar apple rust and how it will affect these trees. It's very prevalent on my property because you can see all of this is eastern red cedar. So cedar apple rust is a strong pressure here. And I believe that the serviceberry is affected by cedar apple rust, because I think it's related to the apple. Correct me if I'm wrong there, please. So there's my, now the next row over is American plum. And these are not a cultivated variety. These are American plum bushes. All of these trees that we're looking at right now were ordered through, it's a project, between Kansas Forestry Service and I believe Kansas State University. Anyway, they have this conservation tree program, and that's where all of these came from. So they're not actually cultivated varieties. And as these plants progress, I'll likely be experimenting with grafting cultivated varieties onto these rootstocks. You see the American plum is doing pretty well here. And you can see in this row, I haven't added wood chips since the last time I did a mow and blow. And so you can see there's wood chips underneath. Believe it or not. Wood chips underneath here. But there's quite a bit of grass that's been blown on top. And that's what I'm going to keep doing, is mowing about an 8-foot swath around these rows. And blowing that onto the tree rows themselves, that added organic material boost or added mulch. I mean, here's an example of how big some of these grasses can get. This guy's got me beat in height, and these big C4 grasses are what come to dominate these fields if you don't keep them under control. One thing that I found really important is the mulching prior to dormancy break. If you can get your mulch down prior to, especially the C4 grasses, but if you can manage all the grasses, if you can get that mulch down before they break dormancy, you're going to have a huge head start on counteracting weed pressure and grass pressure. So this here is buffalo berry. And there, it seems to be doing pretty well. Like I said, I haven't seen a ton of growth out of hardly anything in this orchard. That might be due to lack of nitrogen, because I did not fertilize with nitrogen. And but a lot of it I think actually has to do with the water pressure and the drought and the heat. I said I was watering these, but just basically enough to keep them alive. And I'm hoping they're really driving down some good root systems, and that I'll see more and more growth next year. It's common with perennial plants to not see a ton of growth in the first year anyway, because they really like to pump some energy into their root systems before they start to grow up top. So it's pretty good survivability with the buffalo berry. This next row over is it's chokecherry. So chokecherry, it's suffering a little bit from either a bacterial or a fungal leaf spot here. As you can see, it's kind of one of those, most of these plants have it. Another thing is, I'm not going to be spraying any of these plants. If they can't make it in this ecosystem, and then with these pest and disease pressures, they're not going to make it on this property, and I'll replace them with something that will make it or will survive. And all of the resistant trees are going to live. And so that's kind of my mentality here. It's kind of Mark Shepard's stun mentality. I'm doing the bare minimum to keep these guys alive, and I'm not doing much to control pests and disease pressures. I think a lot of that I'm going to try to control in the future through just good plant nutrition, trying to cycle back a lot of organic material, increase the fungal duff. If you guys haven't read Michael Phillips' book, it is called The Holistic Orchard, I believe. Yeah, Holistic Orchard. Anyway, really great book, and he talks a lot about that. He also has a really good video series on Living Web Farms' YouTube channel. So that's a great resource as well. But these buffalo bear, or these chokecherry are doing pretty well. We've got a visitor out here. This is my son, Maxton. And he came out to see what I was doing.
No.
So
I need you to come inside for a second.
okay, I will be inside in just a minute. Okay, buddy? All right.